Shalom, everybody. Rabbi Edelstein here with a short Torah thought sponsored by MEOR, Washington, D.C. MEORDC.com is our website. Check it out and learn about the programs we offer. Okay, I'm going to try to convey some very important and deep stuff here in a short time. Hope I don't speak too fast. That's always a problem I have, I know. But this week's Torah portion is Chukas, in the book of Bamidbar, book of Numbers. And the first subject talked about in the portion is a very famous and interesting and important and rather mysterious commandment, mitzvah, known as the Para Aduma, the red heifer. And this will teach us important, essential principles in coming close to God. And that is the purpose of our lives in this world. Our Torah teaches, our sages teach. The purpose of life in this world, why God created a human being, was to choose, for a person to choose to come close to Him. So therefore, we have some very, very, very essential and relevant things to learn right here now, very quickly. What is the red heifer? What is the Para Aduma? Well, it relates to concepts of spiritual purity and impurity, tahara, purity, tuma, and impurity, that are not as relevant today as they were in earlier times when the temple stood or the tabernacle stood. And basically, if someone was in a state of spiritual impurity, they couldn't enter the temple or certain parts of the temple. What gave them, what caused a person to become spiritually impure? Different things, but the paragon, the epitome of spiritual impurity, our oral tradition teaches, and the Torah itself teaches, is conveyed by a human corpse, a dead body. A dead coming into contact with or close proximity to a dead body conveys tuma of the highest level, spiritual impurity, such that someone could not enter the temple or the. Now, why is that so? We can't go into it now. These are very deep concepts, but basically, Torah is a path of life, and the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, was the connector between us and the physical world, and Hashem Yisbarach, the source of all life, and death had no entryway into the temple. And therefore, coming into contact with a dead body would require a certain purification process in order to then be able to go into the temple. We'll have to leave it at that now. What was that purification process if one came into contact with a dead body? Being sprinkled with water mixed with the ashes of the red cow, the red heifer, the Para Aduma, as described in the beginning of this Torah portion. Basically, a completely red cow, russet-colored or ruddy-colored cow, is shechted in front of a Kohen, a Jewish priest, and then it's burned down to its ashes. And in the course of that burning, a Kohen, a Jewish priest, as the Torah describes, had to do certain things, throw into the fire cedar wood and a branch of a hyssop, a lowly bush, and a crimson thread had to be thrown into the burning of the red cow. I know it sounds crazy, very deep stuff, very mystical stuff, but it had to be thrown into that burning. The ashes of the red heifer, of the red cow, were then mixed with water, with details we can't go into now, and sprinkled on the person, the body of a person who came into contact with a dead body. And that allowed that rendered them, that made them tahor, pure, ritually pure, in order to be able to go into the temple. I know you're thinking, what's going on here? It's a very important and deep and mysterious and mystical topic. We can't get into the details of it except for the following angle I want to pursue now. And that, by the way, that's actually why in Jewish law we're not allowed to go onto the Temple Mount nowadays. Some people do, they don't know, because we're all considered ritually impure, because we've all been in proximity to a dead body or been in a cemetery or whatever, and therefore, technically in Jewish law, we can't go up on the Temple Mount until we're sprinkled with the ashes of a red heifer, which means that we have to have a red heifer appear, and then we'd go through the process of becoming pure. That's all part of the Messianic story, the coming of the Mashiach, and when that will happen, it will all take place as it should. But in any case, now, for our purposes today, please stay with me, this is important. There are many symbolic and ethical teachings associated with the commandments and the details of the Para Aduma, the red heifer. It says, what does the Kohen throw into the fire after the red heifer is shechted? Cedar wood and hyssop, which is a bush, a branch of a bush, and red, scarlet, or crimson thread, woolen thread. And that's part of the process. So the great commentators talk about the symbolism that's very important for us in coming close to God, the point we started with. And I'm going to be following along the lines of the great Slonim Rebbe, the Nesivo Shalom, in his beautiful sefer, his beautiful book called Nesivo Shalom, how he approaches it. And really, this commandment of the red heifer teaches us what we need to do, the traits we need to embody, work on, and integrate in order to come close to God, which is the essence of our lives here on this earth. It says that the Kohen has to throw in, and by the way, how do we know that this ritual of the red heifer has anything to do with our general service of God? Because the Torah begins by saying a very strange verse. This is the law of the Torah. Zos Chukas Torah. Instead of saying this is the law or the decree of the red heifer, it says this is the law of the Torah, as if to suggest that the details of the red heifer teach us something very, broadly applicable to our connection to Torah at large and to connecting to God in the grandest sense possible. And indeed it does. Because the Kohen throws in cedar wood followed by hyssop and a red thread. So the Slonim Rebbe explains that the cedar wood, and actually basing himself on our sages say the cedar wood is a cedar tree is a very, very high tree. It represents grandeur, if you will, haughtiness. Not necessarily negative, because you can have a positive sense of grandeur, but grandiosity, if that's a word, right? And the hyssop is a very lowly bush, and that represents humility. You need both in order to attain purity, tahara, which is an expression of closeness to God, which is the purpose of our lives on earth. You need to integrate within yourself two traits, seemingly contradictory. One is a sense of your own importance, because every one of us is created in God's image, and a Jewish person, by dint of our covenant with God, has a special closeness to God, a special covenant. We're very important. Every one of us is the child of the king, B'nai HaMelech. We're children of the king. That's a sense of our importance, spiritually speaking. That is indispensable in serving God. But it can lead to arrogance or haughtiness or thinking that we don't have to work on ourselves more. We're already at the level spiritually we need to be. It has to be combined with a sense of lowliness, a sense of, before God, I'm really nothing, and I have so far to go to attain higher and higher levels, like Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, attained, and he was the ultimate example of humility. So you need both traits, a sense of our own importance and greatness, and combined with, along with, a sense of our humility, how much we have yet to traverse to attain the levels. Grandiosity, if you will, and humility. A sense of our own importance and a sense of our lowliness. Both are needed. The grandeur is symbolized by the cedar tree. Grows very high and tall and straight. And the lowliness is symbolized by the hyssop, the branch of the lowly bush, as well as the crimson thread. The word in the Torah for the crimson thread is like a worm, a worm-shaped piece of crimson thread, lowliness. Grandeur and lowliness at the same time. One without the other is very bad. If you're too grandiose, then you become haughty, and Hashem says, I don't want any part of you. If you're too lowly, you think, I'm not important, what I do doesn't matter. No, it matters very much. We're B'nai HaMelech, we're children of the king, we're part of the Jewish people with a special connection to God, and we have the ability to mitakein and ma'ala, to elevate and rectify and elevate the whole world. We're very important, but don't get haughty. So the combination of a sense of our own importance and a sense of our own lowliness in comparison with Hashem himself and what the levels we could reach and should strive to reach, they have to go together. That's the message of this ritual of the red heifer. If you do it, and actually the Slonim Rebbe points out that first you need a sense of your importance, because that you have to start with that I'm a unique creation, a human being, and a Jewish person with limitless potential and strengths that go beyond our imagination. But don't get haughty, don't get arrogant, you have to keep working. That's when you bring in the hyssop, the crimson thread, the sense of our lowliness. Got to keep working and keep striving. The combination of those two, both in the service of holiness, of elevating ourselves in the world, help us to attain tahara, purity, spiritual purity. That's the symbolic message of the details of the red heifer. Very, very beautiful point. It's hard, it's difficult. You got to keep in your mind too, as one of my rabbis, Rabbi Orlowick, I'll mention, a long time ago, mentioned to me when I studied under him, with him in Israel, under his tutelage, he said, oftentimes Torah demands of us two contradictory ideas kept in our mind simultaneously. So here too, what we're talking about follows with that. You need to have a sense of your own greatness, limitless greatness, unbelievable potential, unique contribution you can make to the world. But at the same time, a sense of your lowliness before God, before the levels you could attain. If you got to keep working and working and never rest on your laurels. That's the teaching of the red heifer, and with it, God willing, the combination of those two, much more to say, but we'll have to wait for another week, we can reach the level of tahara, of spiritual purity, another way of saying, enabling us to connect to God. Oh, I got to say one more thing. Before you throw in the cedar wood and the hyssop and the red thread, you have to burn the para aduma to its ashes, the red cow to its ashes. The Slonim Rebbe says beautifully, that's the idea of the red heifer represents physicality. And many commentaries say that the details, it's full of vitality. It represents, in a sense, materialism or physicality. That's not bad, but we can't make that our focus. It has to be burned, so to speak, with the fire of holiness, with the vision that physicality is a means to connect us to God. It's not an end in and of itself. When we have that perspective, we combine it with the sense of our own greatness and our lowliness, and then we reach purity, tahara. Have a wonderful rest of the week and a wonderful Shabbat.